you here. I'm going to start talking up here. Welcome, ladies. We're really glad to have you all come to watch our presentation today. We love to do this with the pioneer women of St. Cloud, the early women who came, and their presentations are based on actual women who lived in St. Cloud and came as early settlers. My name is Olive Horning. I'm the curator for the Heritage Museum and the president of the Women's Club this year. We're always happy to work with the library, and we have upcoming events, which you just heard Michelle talking about. So I hope you'll be able to come to some of those events too. Some are here at the library, some are walking tours, and we have a good museum, or well, it's a museum also, and a cemetery historian who does the cemetery tour, and you'll learn a lot about the people who are buried in the old section of Mount Beast Cemetery. So now we'd like to go ahead and get started. And so the first person who's going to be speaking is the president of the Women's Club.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very glad to see such a good turnout. I just thought I'd bring you some of the produce that comes from our gardens outside of town. A lot of people don't know what this is, but this is called a strawberry onion and is planted between the rows of strawberries. And of course, you know the oranges and the other um, items that we grow in our gardens here outside of town. I don't think I introduced myself. I'm Mrs. Ed George, but my friends call me Mary. And today I'm going to talk a bit about what has happened in St. Cloud since it was founded. And if you'll bear with me, I have some notes because there's dates to remember, and I don't remember those well. The Women's Club was founded in 1910. Our mission is to bring literary improvement, advancement to the town, and establish a library, to which we're working very hard about. In just 1 year, from the time we formed the Ladies Improvement Club, which is now called the Women's Club of St. Cloud, we bought a small 6x12 building, and that was our reading room. And the ladies worked very hard to make that a comfortable place for our residents to come and enjoy information that they're looking for. But as we move forward, I'm going to give you more than what just today is. You're just going to have to pretend you have a crystal ball, see in the future, and I'll give you some dates to go with that. We have outgrown our small building, and we are now in the People's Bank building for a while. But we have held lantern sales, food sales, lectures, serving ice cream on Saturday afternoons to raise the money for that. Some of the best entertainment in our area has come to St. Cloud. And through that, we raise money also. So we're working hard to that way. Today was a really joyous day. I met with Judge Peckham. Now, he likes us to call him by his first name. So it's actually Judge J.G. Peckham. But he has consulted with us, and he is going to help us buy the lots that are 4, 5, 6, and 7 in block 160. It'll cost $700, but it had been $1,400. And he is willing to hold the paper for us for 1 year. If we have the money, he will give us a little advance time, and we'll start that as our project to establish our library. When the library is built, it'll be a Grecian-style building. The construction will be done by P.E. Morgan. It is said Mr. Morgan is going to make it the best building in this town. The building will consist of one large room divided with folding doors, the Lincoln alcove for relics, a library room, a miniature kitchen, and lavatories, and have the most up-to-date electrical wiring. It will be built with hollow clay tile and stained stucco. And what grand news we have. I'm sure all you ladies will enjoy hearing this. 2 lady architects will be our designers. Ida Ryan, being one of them, has spent time studying with Lloyd Wright, Frank Lloyd Wright. So that's exciting in itself because this just doesn't happen in the world we live in today. So as we move on, it's 1921. So as you can see, we've went from 1915 to 1921. That's the crystal ball effect. This is where you get to see what happens in the future. We have about 3,000 books now and continuing to raise money. The First National Bank closed and we lost about 40% of our money, but that has been returned. So it has been a challenging time when the bank closed. Mr. King, a pioneer resident of the city, has always been interested in the library. And he has had the idea to have the Grand Old Army Post send out information for donations, and it has been responded to. Our local post, Mitchell Post, donated $100. The Women's Relief Corporation, I'm sorry, they're not a corporation, they're a corps, donated $100. There were other large pledges of $100 and $500 from various residents. The building price of the library will be $4,500. And we have moved now to 1922, and a cornerstone has been laid by Mr. Sam Bramar. The library also has an official title now. It is the Veterans Memorial Library. The library and the cornerstone was laid in May of 1922. And since we already have the name, we can turn our attention to other things. And the dedication was February 17th, 1923. We have a remaining debt of $800, but today $450 was donated, and we will apply that to our remaining debt. Now, I would be remiss if I did not take the time to announce the names of the ladies who have worked so hard to get our library building started. And that would be a name that I have to look at this other page to tell you. Mrs. Westcott, Mrs. Hendrick, she was our first president. Mrs. Squire, Mrs. Harris, Mrs. White, and also Mrs. Dr. C.S. Cooper. I believe our new library will be a centerpiece of the community, and our members will continue to support literacy advancement and community involvement. I wish you all a very pleasant day. I know it's not very pleasant outside, but enjoy your day. Thank you. And I will now turn this over to Miss Lucy Ann Dorse. She is our local teacher.
Good morning. Good morning. Today is March 12th, 1908. My name is Miss Lucy Ann Dorse, and I have recently taken over as the school marm at the Sunnyside School. The previous school marm has married and therefore resigned her post. For as you are well aware, in 1908, a woman cannot continue to teach once she marries. Our area has been bustling with growth lately. Homes, farmsteads, even businesses have been building up rapidly. We have already been given the proper distinction of our own county, Osceola. And education is just as important to those of us in 1908 as it was to our founding pioneer settlers. Osceola County can trace its educational roots to 15 farm family children seated on wooden benches with no backs, studying Webster's Blue Book Speller in a one-room brick schoolhouse that dates back to at least 1869. The Shake Rag School is Osceola County's oldest public school, and Mary Sidney Kendall Steffi was the school's first teacher. Many people wonder how the Shake Rag School obtained its name. Some say because the school had no bell. When Miss Steffi wished to call her pupils to class, she stood on the front steps and shook a rag to get their attention. Others say the name came from the Friday night dances held at the schoolhouse, where young girls twirling in dresses and petticoats were known to shake a rag to the music. Not having known Miss Steffi, I cannot say which is true. But I digress. Kissimmee's first public school opened with 30 pupils in a one-room schoolhouse at Main Street and Orange back in 1882. The school year was just 3 months long, naturally. For in 1882, planting, tending, and harvesting crops emptied classrooms. Our area has been slow in adapting a 9-month school calendar because our beautiful climate allows for farming almost year-round. Nowadays, those who can afford to do so hire tutors or send their children to private schools, as the Shake Rag School is quite a distance away. Tom and Elizabeth Silas hired tutors for all 13 of their children, including young Lawrence Silas, and they built their own schoolhouse on their very own farmland. And of course, the Whittier residents have been promised money to build their own schoolhouse by none other than the railroad tycoon, Mr. Henry Flagler, provided the town agrees to change their name to honor Mr. Flagler's wife, Mary Lily Keenan. Here in St. Cloud, in 1890, Mr. S.L. Lupfer Sr. established the school where I currently teach, a small, one-room, wooden schoolhouse at Maryland Avenue and 10th Street. It was Mr. Lupfer who named it the Sunnyside School. What is school like in my classroom in 1908? What do I teach? How do I discipline? The school day begins at 8 a.m. Most students do not have their own horse and therefore must walk anywhere up to 3 miles to attend class. Notice I said the school day begins at 8 a.m. Prior to class, chores such as milking the cows, feeding chickens and pigs, carrying in wood or water, all have to be completed before beginning the trek to school. At 8 a.m. sharp, I ring my school bell, and the students form 2 lines to enter the classroom. Boys in one line, girls in the other, from youngest to oldest. I stand at the door and greet each child. Boys and girls are seated on separate sides of the classroom. I call attention for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Robert Anderson, who is the president of the St. Cloud Veterans Association, has promised me a flag with all 46 states represented. But until then, we make do. Following the Pledge of Allegiance, we recite the Lord's Prayer. Sometimes I lead us in song, followed by roll call. In a one-room schoolhouse, the students are seated according to their level of ability. Usually this means that the younger students are seated in the front and the older students are seated in the back. As the morning lessons begin, I explain assignments for each grade level. Reading, penmanship, and arithmetic are stressed more than any other subjects. These subjects are known as the 3 R's: readin', writin', and arithmetic. Personally, I've added a 4th R, recitation. As with the scarcity of books and paper, much memorization and drilling takes place in my classroom. Students learn by rote, which means to memorize and recite. To cipher means to solve math problems, either orally or on slate boards. To parse sentences means to explain the meaning and function of every single word in a sentence. As one grade turns, rises, and passes to the recitation bench, other grades work on assignments. After a short turnout for privy privileges, girls first to the outhouse, then boys, the arithmetic lesson begins. Younger pupils complete their work on shared slate boards. After I correct each child's work, he or she is sent to the back of the room, while the older students practice their math drills orally. After arithmetic comes penmanship, for writing in a good hand is a valuable skill. In copybooks, my students write their names, the date, and a short line of scripture or a proverb. At the noon lunch hour, each row of students is sent in an orderly fashion to the back of the room for their lunch pails and a tin cup to fill with water. In temperate weather, lunch is eaten and recess is taken outdoors. When I ring my bell at the end of the lunch hour, students line up to re-enter the schoolhouse. The afternoon session includes spelling, grammar, and history lessons. Students also read and discuss a story. This allows them the opportunity to polish their skills in elocution as they speak out loud. A geography lesson ends the day's courses, except on Fridays, which is the day of the weekly spell down. At day's end, slates are cleaned and books are put away. Special announcements and chore assignments are made for the following day. Row by row, students retrieve their belongings and are dismissed in an orderly fashion. I stand by the door and bid each child farewell. Any student who misbehaved throughout the day is kept late to perform such tasks as sweep the floors, gather and wash the tin cups, or submit to any other punishment of my choosing. Which brings me to the subject of discipline. Students are expected to show respect for their maker, their parents, their schoolmarm, and each other. Discipline for not following the rules is swiftly administered. Common forms of punishment include whipping the palms and backside with a wooden ruler, standing in the corner, or sitting on a stool wearing a dunce cap. I have also found to be effective standing with one's nose inside a drawn circle on the blackboard, memorizing long passages, or copying text from the Bible. However, what I have found to be the most effective form of punishment for unruly young boys is sitting on the girls' side of the classroom with a bonnet on his head. Do keep in mind that the connection between school and home is quite close in 1908. Therefore, students who are punished in school often return home to be punished yet again. I assure you, the majority of my pupils are model students. Lately, it is rumored that Mrs. George, the widow Norris, and their group of lady friends wish to establish a library here in St. Cloud, perhaps at the railroad depot. I have also heard it said that our city will soon have its own two-story brick building to be used as a public school, aptly named the St. Cloud School. Such rapid growth for a small town. A schoolmarm such as myself cannot help but wonder if all this growth will leave room for the one-room schoolhouse. Children, I invite you to please turn your attention to Farmer Zechariah Jameson. Boys and girls, you are dismissed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Zachariah Jameson. I'm a landowner here in this area. I do a lot of farming. My farming consists of livestock, cattle, hogs, chickens, and a lot of this material that I get from these animals, I will take into town and try to sell to the locals that are coming into town. Understand there's some people coming down from the north. Why the north? Carpetbaggers. But they're coming down here. I understand they're veterans of the American Civil War, or we like to call it the war between the states. Well, they're coming here and they've been promised plots of land here, and they want to start a colony here. So that's what's happening here. So aside from my farming here, I've been asked by Hamilton Diston. He has a sugar mill out here, and he's growing sugar cane out here to try to experiment on seeing how sugar cane will do in this part of Florida. And he's hired a lot of people to do that. So I'm helping him out growing some sugar cane out in my fields. Of course, the fields out here are pretty much swampland, as you know. So it's good land for that kind of growing. I do some other growing, some corn, some wheat, some beans and so forth, but mostly the livestock is what I deal with. After the big freeze we had in 1894, the sugar cane and the citrus crops in Florida were pretty much decimated. And it really did a toll on farmers out here. And it had its effect on me too. So I started realizing that I can't grow anything because the ground was still just too saturated with junk, because when you lose all your crops, it just dies. And then you got to start all over, and it's a lot of work. Some of my cattle out there, I have 250 head of cattle out here. And we use the branding iron here to mark them so I know where my cattle are at all time. I don't have a lot of fences. We do have some workers here that will herd for me, and they'll get these cattle and bring them back in when we need them. But aside from the farming, like I say, the sugarcane industry pretty much fizzled out. And we're up into the late 1890s now. And like I say, I was approached by the Seminole Land and Investment Company to help clear area for these new homes that these so-called Civil War veterans are coming down here to acquire. And to do that, we have to clear all this land for them. So I took on the job of doing this, and they pay me pretty good, and it's a good supplement to my farming. So we're using standard saws, cross cut saws, forestry saws. And this would probably be made by Mr. Hamilton's saw company. He owned a saw company before he started up his sugar mill plantation. So we use these to clear trees, a lot of cypress trees, some pine, and some of this palmetto trees that we have out there, but nothing really, really big yet. This is a hay baler. This is used for hay. In my farming implements, I'd use this to move the hay bales. Up north, they would use these sometimes for your ice to go into ice boxes. So they would use these, but we don't have ice down here. This is a hay baler cutter. Got to cut these bales down, and we stack them up. And we use this to feed some of the livestock out there. Simple sickle for removing grass, wild grass. We have lots of that, a lot of swampy grass. We use that to clear that out. It's a lot of hard work. I was asked by the Seminole Land Investment Company to start moving this land. I work with about 100 men, and we're clearing out all this area for all these new homes. Understand, you can get a home in this new colony, they're calling it. And I've heard names like St. Cloud being mentioned, but I think that's what they want to name the area. And it was $50 for this plot of land in the beginning. Now, I heard that they could raise that price up because they're going pretty quick. So that's what's happening there, and I'm helping them with that. That's pretty much what I do. And I want to thank the ladies here for letting you know I'm not with the ladies club, so you can relax. But they invited me to show you the role of men in the St. Cloud area at the time. So that's what I'm doing here. Right now, I want to introduce Mrs. Hester Youngblood, and she was a laborer over at Diston Sugar Plantation, and she's going to tell you about what she does over there. So go ahead and take it.
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to hold it. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mrs. Hester Youngblood, and I was born in South Carolina. Later, I moved to St. Cloud with my husband and one child. And yes, I did work in the Diston Sugar Mill Plantation. And the remains are still here. If you ever want to go check it out, it's here right off of Brown Chapel Road on Blackberry Circle. And my day started working in the sugar mill plantation, where we gathered the canes from the farmers, the sugar canes, and processed them, ran them through the machine and everything to get the sugar sweet and processed and everything for being able to, just give out to the families and people like that. And that was my early part of the day. Later, my day was going to other families. So going to other families, I will also help them cook meals, do laundry, and take care of their children. So I had a pretty long day from the sugar mill and then going to take care of other families. And as my day ended, I had to go back home and take care of my own family, clean my own home, and all these other things as well for my own family. And I had to be back at sundown in this town in St. Cloud. It was known as a sundown town. So I had to go home in a small little area that was called the Colored Quarters, which is still located here if you look up the parcels for Colored Quarters. And it was very small. So that was my day, long hours at the sugar mill, taking care of families, and then coming home and taking care of my family. So I just want to show you guys the sugar here from the sugar mills for my day working and laboring at the sugar mill plantation. So just give you guys a glimpse there. And that is the sugar. And that was my day. And I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Norris, the baker.
Well, oh, piddle. Sorry. My name is Sarah Norris. I was born in 1875, and I came to St. Cloud with my husband, and we didn't have much when we moved here, but we did have a dream for a better life. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and how I became a baker. I'm originally from a small town in northwest Kansas. I was raised on a farm. I was the youngest of 4 girls. And because I was so young, I wasn't allowed to work in the fields with my sister and my mama and my papa because I was so little. But they decided I still could contribute so I could help my grandmother make the meals, the daily meals. Papa built me a stool so I could stand up and reach the countertops to work with Grandma Hess to make the meals. I was quick. I'm sorry. It's been up very early. I've been up, standing up, helping my grandmother bake, and I was a quick learner, and I was becoming a very accomplished baker. And I remember my grandmother never, ever used measuring cups or spoons. She would flour, and she would measure, and it would come out to a cup of flour. She never used measuring cups, and it was always a little pinch of this and a little pinch of that for her seasonings and her salts. I still use that same method today. We grew wheat and corn on our farm. We also had chickens and a couple of cows. And I remember Papa, when the grain was harvested, he would take it in the wagon and he'd take it to town to be sold. But he would always hold back corn and wheat, which the miller would grind for us. So we always had plenty of cornmeal and flour for our own personal baking. I married John after he was out of the service. He was in the military and he was out of the service. And when the war ended, we decided he wanted to become a carpenter, so he worked very hard. And then he heard that they were giving an opportunity to buy property and everything in the South for veterans. And he heard it was a great opportunity. So here we are. We're in Florida now. We just packed up and we moved with very little. John died shortly, a few years after we moved to Florida, and I was left with a small house on a lot, 5 acres of property, and a widow's pension of $8 a month. So I decided I needed to do something to earn a living, so I knew that I could cook and I could bake. So I went and I bought several large barrels of flour and some other baking supplies, and I bought a tent and an old secondhand stove, and I decided I would start to bake. Making bread meant that I had to get up very early in the morning. I would get up between 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning because, to bake the bread, it takes time, and I had to have everything baked and out on the table by 7 o'clock. So my first loaf of bread would go and be baked. I'm sorry, I get a little ahead of myself because I like to get stuff in the oven because it smells so good. I would bake the bread. No, let me start over. I would make the bread, then it rise up, and then I would form it into the loaves, and I would put it on a sheet to rise for a half hour. And while it's rising, I would make cornbread and biscuits and sometimes cookies to sell. And then now it's 5 o'clock. The bread goes into the oven, and I start another pan of bread because I bake between 20 and 30 loaves of bread a day. And it's church time. I bake between 20 and 30 loaves of bread a day. Okay. Okay. uh, I'm sorry. Okay, it's 6:30 now, and it's time for me to start making another pan of bread. But first, the other loaves have come out, and they're out on the front table because I open my tent flaps at 7 o'clock. Well, I'll have bread out there and my biscuits and some cornbread and some cookies if I choose to make cookies that day. Now it's at 7 o'clock, and I've opened it up. I'm waiting for my customers, but I've also got another pan of bread dough ready to be rolled out and put in the oven. I do this 4 times a day. 4 times every 2 hours, I got another pan of bread in the oven. Now, at 12 o'clock, my last loaf of bread are out of the oven and on the table. It's now 2 o'clock, and there's very little left on my table, maybe a couple of biscuits and some cookies, but I will take those and wrap them up and give them to the neighborhood children when I go home. I close the tent at 2 o'clock, and this is when I start my cleanup and getting everything ready and making my list for what I need tomorrow. It's 5 o'clock now after my cleanup, and I'm going to head home, but first I will stop by the general store and I'll pick up the supplies that I need for tomorrow. And I have to be very careful how much I spend. Today was a good day. I made $11.50. And if it keeps going like that, pretty soon I'll be able to be in a small building and I can buy a new stove with a bigger oven. But I'm at the store now, and I have to be careful how much I spend because sugar is now almost 4 cents a pound. And it's 18 cents for 5 pounds of flour. Do you believe? So I get my groceries, put them together, and I start my way home to fix dinner for Alice and me. Alice is my cat. Now it's coming up on 9 o'clock, and it's getting time for bed. But I do check my list one more time to be sure that I have everything for tomorrow. This is what I do 5.5 days a week. On Saturday, I only work a half a day because that's the day that I do my chores and my personal shopping. And Sunday is my church day and my day of rest, where I spend time enjoying my friends and my family. I wish you all a good good Sunday. I wish to see you on Monday morning. I have brought cornbread and some baked products if you'd like to try them out just to check out my cornbread that I've made. Good morning. I wish to see you on Monday morning. I think I said that before, didn't I? I like Monday mornings. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I got so excited. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, this is Miss Jackie. She's our laundress and a seamstress, well known in the city of St. Cloud.
Hi, I'm Miss Jackie. I'm a local gal. My family lived in Kissimmee, and I came out here and I was hired at the St. Cloud Hotel over on New York and 10th. And I'm hired as a seamstress and laundress. And I take care of all the rooms that the guests are staying in. I take care of the sheets and the towels. Sometimes I have to mend them. The hems come off on the top of the sheets. And we have to repair little holes sometimes in the towels and make everything quite nice. Also, we have some veterans that are staying at the hotel. They're living here. They're living in St. Cloud while they're building homes in this new colony. They have acquired kits for homes that are sent, they're delivered to the area, and they could either build the houses themselves if they're handy, or they can hire a construction person. So that's keeping me busy because I'm taking care of all of their belongings as well. We do have some that came ahead of their families. And we have these men that are by themselves and they need the services of laundry, mending socks, sewing on buttons, reinforcing buttonholes. There's a whole slew of things that I have to do. Probably the thing that I have to do the most is mend socks. We have lots of holes in socks, but we'll get to that in a little while. First thing I need to do is get some laundry going. I have some hot water here. We soak all the clothes when they come in very, very hot water. We have to be careful of bugs and disease and that sort of thing. Once they're all soaked, they'll be inspected for spots. I'll treat spots with all my soaps. I have different types of soaps here. And then they'll soak. I'll scrub them with the washboard. Sometimes I need to use a brush. It depends on how bad it is. And I transfer them with my laundry stick into the rinse water. And we squish them around with the rinse water and transfer them to another tub where maybe we'll add some bluing for the shirts, make everything nice and white. Once I'm all done and I squeeze all the water out, I take them outside, hang them on the clothes dryer, or we'll put them over the bushes and lay them out flat and let them dry under our hot Florida sun. And that gives them a nice white look. Some things are ironed. The shirts, the white shirts, I definitely need to iron, all of those. And then I get to my mending. And here we are with our sock again. And we have, you probably might not know what this is. And I have several sizes of yarn darners. It's called a yarn egg. It has different names, different locations. And we put it in the sock. And instead of patching, I'll mend. And when we mend, we take a needle and we'll go crisscross like we're weaving, a flat spot on the hole. If I was to take a piece of wool and patch it, it would leave a big bump, and that's not very comfortable. I also will mention that some of the buildings, the floorboards are kind of not too smooth the way they were sanded. They need to be sanded, and it creates havoc on the socks. So I have my book here, and it gives me all sorts of ideas of different ways that you can mend or patch and take care of clothing. And that takes care of my day. I think I'm going to go visiting now that my work is done for the day. And Mrs. McMillan is home, I hope. And we will go over and visit with her.
Hi, my name is Sarah McMullen. My husband was in the Spanish-American War, and his family had come down here. They had a lot of land they bought. So they told him, come on to Florida, come to Florida, because we lived in Colorado. So we took up and moved all of our stuff in a Model T car. Now, my husband was down here for a while, and then I came with my 3 children. It took us a whole month to get down here, for we had to go on dirt roads. There was no roads back in the 1920s, much like there is now. We got cars stuck between 2 trees. That was the only way to go. Otherwise, we'd end up in the swamp somewhere. So it was a hard time taking everything off that we had packed around the car, putting it back on after we got it pushed through the trees. My husband was glad that I got here because he didn't have to go to the laundress so much. It was now my job to get everything clean for him. We would iron on a wood stove. We had the trivet that would sit there, and I would keep my arms on the stove, and I'd put it on there to keep them warm. It really wasn't an iron, it was a press, because we couldn't go back and forth. But for my birthday, I got an iron. I've got it put away right now, and I can't wait till I get my stove that I won't have to use this one anymore. We have electricity in our house. I'm still afraid of it a little bit, so I still trust my trusty kerosene heater, kerosene lantern. My family goes to school in the morning. My husband goes to work. Then my day starts. I start with the load of lash, just like she would do, hot water, scrubbing it, and I would go on through. These are a few of the tools that I would use in the morning to cook the eggs. I'd have to scramble them up in some way. I could chop my food up with my instruments. And if I wanted tea, this is a tea strainer, not a regular strainer, but you would put your loose tea in here and it wouldn't go through into your cup. We had an ice box. We didn't have a refrigerator yet. So every day the iceman would come with a block of ice. It's so hot down here, it melts with no problem. We would take an ice pick, very sharp at the end, and we'd chop some up, put it in our glass to have some lemonade. We also had the cabbage cutter, where you could shave your cabbage, no problem, because cutting thin slices on cabbage was very hard to do. My husband would sometimes take some of the vegetables into Cottrell's farm, into Cottrell's store, where we would stop and get groceries. And now I'm going to let her go ahead with hers.
Yeah, I'm Mrs. Cottrell, and my husband, Charles R. Cottrell, and I traveled from southern New York State to St. Cloud to find a warmer, nicer climate. And we traveled with my daughter, Marjorie, my son, Roy, and his wife, Ruth. We opened a grocery store to supply the residents of St. Cloud with fresh fruits and vegetables, which I have here. There was eggplant and cucumbers, cabbage, onions, tomatoes, corn. And then in the fruit line, we had tomatoes and lemons, though sometimes we had to get lemons from other places. And we have oranges that we grow here. And then in my store, I would weigh some of the produce, the things like the tomatoes and the cabbage, to sell to the residents of St. Cloud. Many of our neighbors did have places outside of town where they grew fruits and vegetables. And they also there was apparently a real bumper crop of potatoes, which they would sell to my store and some of the other stores in St. Cloud, and also watermelons. They had big watermelons that they grew here, and pineapples. That was a great area for pineapples until they started having problems with nematodes. I have big barrels for that I get some of my produce from but I wasn't able to bring these big barrels in today. So and then Mr. Peck and Mr. Miller would supply me with chickens and eggs. And I have a big sheet of parchment paper here where I write on the prices and total them up for my customers. Sometimes I also use paper bags to total up the prices, and I'll have the prices on here. And then some of my customers will bring burlap bags in to carry their produce home. And I get milk also, and the milk comes in glass bottles, such as this. And the milk is not pasteurized like it is today, and it comes with the cream on the top. And many of the people, they would pour the cream off the top and then use the cream for coffee or tea or whatever else, or sometimes making whipped cream. And they bring their bottles back and they're sent back to be refilled for the dairy people. Now, my husband passed away in 1939, and he's buried in the local cemetery, in the Mount Peace Cemetery. And now I'd like for you to learn a little bit about the Civil War nurse, Mother Bickerdike. Oh, did you would like to buy something? I would like to buy a bag of the lemons there. Okay. This will be, what, 75 cents?
Can you add it to my tab?
Oh, okay. I'll add it. I'll add it to your tab here.
Okay.
And that's it. I keep a ledger here where I add the anyone who isn't able to pay right now, that they'll pay me later, because I know the neighbors are really good about paying when they don't have the money. Thank you. See you later. And I'd like for you to learn something about Mother Bickerdike.
Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry. Okay, I'm a little different than everybody else. Mother Bickerdike didn't live in St. Cloud, okay? So, but I found out about, first of all, I'm Sandy Vogelpol. I am with the Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War. Louisa May Alcott, 1011. It's a mouthful. But anyways, I used to be with Mary Todd Lincoln, 1010, and we took a tour of the GAR Museum one time. And while I was in there, they had these banners. I don't know if you can see them. I have one here. I think this is the one that says Mother Bickerdike. But there were two. The other one is a state banner. And it got me thinking, well, who's Mother Bickerdike? And who are these ladies that joined this group? And why did they name her Mother Bickerdike? So I went on this long search and I found out about her, and she was a very fascinating woman during the Civil War. First of all, she was born in 1817 in Ohio, and her mother died when she was only 1 year old. Her father remarried, and so she went to live with her grandparents and uncle. By the time she was 16, she decided to study botanical medicine, which helped her, learn how to heal with herbs and plants. She also went to work at the Cincinnati Hospital. She got married in 1847 to Richard Bickerdike, who was a musician who actually played for Jenny Lind. And so there's lots of different people that she met in her lifetime that you'll hear through my talk that you'll remember. Anyways, she had 2 children. She had 2 sons, but her husband died in 1859. By 1862, when the war was on, a traveling pastor came to her church, and his name was Edward Beecher, none other than the brother of Harriet Beecher Stowe. So he brought a letter from a volunteer doctor in the Union Army asking for supplies and help. So the church got together, they put together some money and some supplies, and they needed somebody to take this to the camp. So Mother Bickerdike offered to take them there. You might wonder what happened with her children. Well, the town offered to care for her children while she was away. When she got to Cairo, Illinois, and she saw the desperate need for everything that was there, she got right to work and started sanitizing everything, cutting barrels for bathtubs, brick ovens to bake bread. She was a beehive getting things cleaned up for the men. And she cared so much and did so much back then that by the time she got done doing that all, she said, well, I can't stop now. I have to keep going and continue. So she stayed with the Union Army and became a nurse for them. And as she traveled from place to place, she did the same thing. There was one thing else she did. She also helped with the steamships. This was the city of Memphis that she went to and helped. It was actually just a ship that carried supplies for the military, but they soon turned them into hospital ships. So then they did more and more ships like that. Let's see. Let me grab my notes and see where I'm at now. Okay. Yeah, one thing that is to be noted about her is when she was going from camp to camp, she didn't just care for the Union soldiers. She cared for the Confederate soldiers too. She was very compassionate. But she was a very bold woman, and she stepped on a lot of toes of the surgeons back then because most everybody was men. And so one surgeon said to her, "Madame, may I inquire to whose authority you are working?" At which she responded, "Well, I get my authority from the Lord God Almighty. Do you have somebody higher than that?" She also, there was another instance where a surgeon was upset with her, and he went to General Sherman. And we all know General Sherman. And he was complaining, and Sherman says, "Well, who are you talking about?" And he says, "Mother Bickerdike." Well, Sherman says, "Well, I'm sorry, she outranks me. Will you please go see President Lincoln?" Anyways, Mother Bickerdike was a force to be reckoned with. And it even was said that she helped to carry some of the soldiers off the battlefield. She loved them very much, and they became her boys. And as such, that's how she acquired the name Mother Bickerdike. She wore a gray calico dress like this with an apron and a shaker bonnet like I have on here. When the war was over, well, she died at 84. And before she died, I'm sorry, after she left the war, she led the effort to help with the Sanitary Commission, which, aided in those that were sick and wounded from the war. So she continued her work even after the war. And she died at 84. There is a monument erected to her in Gailersburg, Illinois. Where did I put that? Oh, it's not on here. It's on the pamphlet that I have for everybody to see. You can take one of these when you go. I want to add that my search for the Mother Bickerdike tent went on and on. I wanted to find out who these ladies were in this town. This was chartered in 1915, and I could find no record of them anywhere, which upset me. So I went to the library and looked in the microfilm machine and found all kinds of names. And the last time I did this presentation, I asked everybody if you could come up and look in the book and see if there's anybody in here you might be related to, because I wanted to find a descendant of Mother Bickerdike tent. And guess who was a descendant? My dear friend CD down here, who talked about Sarah McMullen. So that was a real thrilling experience for me. I am with Louisa May Alcott. I have brochures here on our tent. You need to be a direct descendant of a Union veteran to join our group. There are other groups. You don't have to be direct. But we would love to have you come and join us. And I'm looking forward to any questions that you might have after we're done. Thank you very much for your time.